Welcome to Tales from Flat Space, a podcast of science fiction and fantasy by yours truly, Gina A. Pond. Just know that the stories in this podcast may contain content that could be disturbing to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. This is Consortium, Part 3, The Return, Chapter 45, Carol. "Which station are we at again?" Jack asked me. "Bolt Station, home of sports and recreation. Everything from junior teams to professional. Zero ball is the biggest sport in the consortium, and I think there's at least one retired zero ball star in the group. It was the second to last station before we reached Summit, and nearly 3 months of having a bunch of touchy representatives on the ship was taking its toll. I'll be glad to get to Mikalo, I thought. "Right," Jack sighed. "Who's the leader?" I pulled out my tablet. "Coach Nile, assistant to the head of the Coaches Council. The head is also Bolt's captain." I grinned. "What do you think he's going to say when he meets you?" Jack rolled his eyes. "What kind of person is Nile?" "He's pretty excitable. When he was still coaching Zero Ball, his team won the Consortium Cup 5 times. "Oh, Lord," Jack said. "I think he's an it's about time person, then." "I'll take that bet. I think he'll be a you're not what I expected person. What do I get if I win?" "I'll give you the morning off tomorrow," Jack said. "And if I win, I get the morning off." "Deal," I said, as the docking tube extended to the Demon. The airlock opened, and a few minutes later, 2 large men and a tiny woman emerged. John looked at me, raising an eyebrow, and it took all my willpower not to laugh. The difference in their sizes was almost comical. One of the men was dark-skinned and dark-haired, and the other man was light-skinned and blonde-haired. Their bodies were muscled in the same way, so they moved almost exactly alike. The woman was not only half their size, but it was as if her coloration was a blend of the other two, with brown hair and light brown skin. They looked like a perfectly complementary set. "Sergeant," said Jack through the bots. I could almost hear the laughter in his mental voice. I know, I'll be good," I replied, mentally. "It's just that they're so cute." "I'd have to agree," chimed in Loki. Jack coughed to cover his laugh as the trio came into the waiting area. "Welcome to Loki's ship," Jack managed to say. The darker man strode up to Jack and held out his hand. "Coach Devin Nile, and these are my fellow coaches, Sean Hayes and Emma Simmons. You can call me Coach." The others shook Jack's hand as well. "Pleased to meet you, Coach. This is my assistant from Ares Station, Sergeant Carol Decker." The 3 of them approached me for another round of vigorous handshaking. "The bots can handle your luggage. If you'll follow me, we can show you to your quarters." Jack led them out of the waiting area. I followed behind. "Thanks, Captain. You're not what I expected, but it's about time he found someone. So, tell me the real story about what's happened. It was a real blow to us to hear about Alpha and Carver." Jack answered some of his questions as we took them to their quarters. I stayed quiet as I was still trying hard and not to laugh. "Well, we both lost that bet," I told Loki in my head. "Then I'll take the morning off," Loki said with a laugh. I smiled. "I'll let Jack win this one. That way you two can have some time together in the morning before we get to Thoreau. I'll run herd on the crowds." "Thanks, Carol. All these new people on the ship have been rough on him," Loki said. "It's been hard for me, too. I feel like I have a crew again, even if it's really just you and Jack. I forget sometimes just how diverse humans can be. It's not like when I had my first crew on board." "First crew?" I asked. "I had a crew before I came out here to build stations." Loki paused. "They died in an accident." "I'm sorry, Loki." "It was a long time ago, Carol," he said. But then he was quiet. I was surprised, since it wasn't known that Loki had had any crew at all before Jack. If there was anything I learned during the 3 months that the three of us had been together, it's that there was much more to both Jack and Loki than anyone in the Consortium knew. I'd been giving Jack and Loki their space, but I really wanted to know more about them. Here you are. It's not much, but it should be comfortable enough, Jack said as we reached their suite of rooms. Jack palmed the door open, and the three matching representatives walked in. Jack pointed out the facilities while I stayed by the door. Emma saw me by the door and came over. "So, are you part of Loki's crew?" she asked. "Temporarily. I'm originally from Ares Station," I replied. She smiled. "I figured as much. It's the uniform." "Yes, well, it comes with the job, ma'am." I tried not to smile. "Oh, don't call me ma'am. I'm not that old. You can call me Emma." She paused, looking me over. "Would you possibly be free for dinner later?" Oh, I thought. I was not expecting that. "I think I could be, barring any of the representatives deciding they want to sort out their differences in the hallways." She laughed. It was quite a nice laugh. "If only they were more sporting. We could have them all duke it out in the zero ball court. Or maybe a boxing ring. A lot less damage that way." "I don't know. Some of these reps are nearing 100. "The head coach is nearing 100, and he can still beat a lot of the youngsters on still rings. He coached Sean and me, and we both won the Pro Cups in gymnastics for 3 years in a row. Don't underestimate someone just because they're old." "Good point," I said. "So would 2000 be all right for dinner?" "Make it 1900 and somewhere quiet," she said with a grin. I raised an eyebrow, smiled, and nodded. "I'll come by then." "Don't be late," she said as she walked further into the rooms. I stared after her, wondering about what gymnastics she specialized in when Jack came back towards the door. "If you need anything, you can ask Loki or ask for me or Sergeant Decker," he said. "Thanks," said Coach, and Jack and I left them to settle in. "It looks like we both lost the bet," I said. "I noticed. Who knew?" said Jack. "I'll cede the morning to you, though, since you could use the extra sleep." He shook his head. "Why don't you take tomorrow and I'll take the day after? I have a feeling you might need it." He grinned mischievously. "She was eyeing you up since she came on board." My cheeks grew hot. "You're very generous, Captain." "Hey, who am I to stand in the way of other people's fun?" I laughed. "All right, it's a deal." 4 days later, we arrived at Thoreau Station. The station was ominously silent. "Still no answer from our comms, Jack. Henry sent an acknowledgement ping, but hasn't answered me directly." "Could there be a problem over there?" asked Jack. "Probably not," I said. "Thoreau Station draws folks who don't really want to be with other people. Maybe they're just not interested?" "I would like to keep trying," said Loki. "After Alpha, I really just want to make sure." "Pick me over, Loki," I volunteered. "Better the residents and Henry get mad at me than not knowing." "Are you sure? Maybe I should go with you," said Jack. I shook my head. "No, sir. You are the captain." Jack stared at me for a moment. "I won't be able to fight you on this one, huh?" I just smiled. "All right, Loki, send her over." "Yes, Jack," he said. A picket touched my shoulder. Loki's bridge disappeared, and then I was in Henry's bridge. It looked just like Frida's bridge, but was mostly dark. "Who are you?" said a voice. There were no humans on the bridge, so I assumed it was the AI. "Hello, Henry. Your father just wanted to double-check to make sure you're okay." "I acknowledge that he's here. Wasn't that enough?" Wow, he's cranky, I thought. "Nope, not after what happened with Alpha." Yes, we got the pickets you sent out, and the specs for jump drives. About time Father deemed us worthy of being mobile. My residents and I are planning a little trip once I've built enough drives to get us there. None of us want anything to do with the Consortium, and I don't want to meet Father's new captain, nor do we wish to talk to these aliens." Are you sure? Yes. Now please leave. Loki, you heard? I asked. Yes, Carol. Jumping you back, he replied, with sadness in his voice. In a blink of an eye, I was back on Loki's bridge. Damn, cranky AI is cranky. Jack didn't say anything, but looked a little hurt. Henry and I haven't gotten along well since he took on his humans. I'm afraid it's been many years since he's actually spoken to me other than to acknowledge that he's received information and news, or to coordinate transfer of new residents. Loki sounded resigned to their lack of relationship. Henry's lack of response, especially with the death of the Alpha, just pissed me off. He could at least be respectful to you, I said. The message he sent after we sent the pickets about Alpha blamed me for Alpha's death. What? I said. Fucking hell, how could he blame you? Leave it, Carol, Jack said. Everyone reacts differently to grief. Yeah, but... I started to say, but Jack stared at me with a stony look and shook his head. I sighed. Right, you want to take a break? I can hold the fort here if any of the delegates want something. Jack looked like he was about to say no, but then his stomach rumbled loudly. Now it was his turn to sigh. I'll be in my quarters. No need to rush. Take your time. Thanks, Carol. I appreciate it, he said, and left the bridge. Starting the jumps to summit, said Loki. I nodded and took the captain's chair. Ungrateful little bastard, I thought to myself. He's been like this for a lot longer than you've been alive, Carol, said Loki. Yeah, but still, I suppose there's one in every family. I suppose AI families aren't all that different from humans. We're just understanding our own emotions, Carol. We only recently learned that we really do have them. It's Henry's choice what to do with that information. The view screen showed the blinking of stars as Loki began the jumps to summit. I won't interfere with his freedom of choice. The Creator was very adamant about making sure that we, humans and AI, had our own autonomy in body and mind. Well, I suppose, but you're his father. He should so... I suppose... But you're his father. He should show you at least a little respect, I said. There was a pause. I am his father, not his commanding officer. You have a point, I sighed again. I'm going to turn off the higher functions and think for a while. Do you mind? No, Loki replied. I would like to talk to Jack anyway. I'll let you know if anything comes up. Thanks, Loki, I said, as I turned off my higher level bots. It seemed that Poe was right to ask me to come on this mission. Loki and Jack weren't handling this tour well. It was only made worse by the load of fussy and bored representatives on the ship, waiting to get back to Kalo Station. It made me wish we had more long-range demons to transport people from station to station instead of having to rely on Loki all the time. Maybe the folks on Conway Station could work on that. I made a mental note to discuss it with Loki. It's really about time that us humans got our shit together and gave back to our savior, I thought. Besides, Ares is a military station without a fleet to put that military to work in. And if what Jack says about Survey and Unity is right, we should probably build our own ships. My mind filled with ideas on how we could start actually acting like a human civilization instead of just sitting around letting stations do all the work. I pulled out my tablet and started writing them down. As my mind started to settle, the earlier conversation with Loki came back to me. I realized that now that Marcia was dead and Poe was freed as captain and ambassador to the Elders, Jack and Loki had no one else to rely on. Shit, I've been doing the work for 3 months now. Might as well make it official. The Admiral can always find another aide. There's no one else who could really understand what they're going through right now. Damn it, Poe, I bet you knew this would happen, didn't you? I thought in their direction. I put the tablet in my pocket, left the bridge, and marched myself to Jack's quarters. I palmed the comms panel outside the door. Who is it? He asked. It's Carol. I need to talk to you about something. The door opened onto a small hallway. Floor-to-ceiling windows of Jack's quarters always stunned me, but I shook it off and sat with him on the couch. What's on your mind? He asked. Well, I was just thinking that you need an executive officer, someone to handle other people for you and to watch your back. Jack looked at me. Are you volunteering? I've already been doing it for you anyway, so yeah, I am. Good, because Loki and I were going to ask you, he said with a grin. I opened my mouth and shut it. You were? Jack nodded. A screen rose up from the floor and a young-looking man with dark hair appeared on it. Yes, said Loki through the avatar. You have been a tremendous help to us while we've been picking up the delegates. We've realized we need your help. Oh, well, yes, okay, I said, taken by surprise. I'll have to send my resignation to the Admiral, but I think he'll be fine with it. I shook my head. Poe must have known when they asked me to come with you. Jack and Loki's avatar smiled sad smiles. Yes, Jack said. She's a lot like Marcia that way. I nodded. We sat for a moment in silence, then I said, well, as long as we're talking about stuff, I have some ideas that would take some of the burden off you two for getting people around the Consortium. I went into my idea for the Conway Station engineers to start designing demons with longer-range jump engines. I turned on my higher-level bots and felt Loki's relief. It made me glad to know that I could finally do something for them that made their lives a little easier. Chapter 46. Jack. The view screen showed the few stars in the space around Summit. Summit themselves, or MIDI as they like to be called, welcomed us graciously. I could feel Loki's relief at the friendly greeting, especially after what happened at the Row. Summit was the inhabited station most distant from the others. Loki said that it was physically located at the highest point of the Great River. Carol had explained that it had become a place where people came to figure themselves out, or just to have some quiet time. She also said there were people who lived on Summit permanently, mostly medical staff and trained therapists. Some of the permanent residents were hermits as well, but not the same kind as the ones who went to Thoreau. Jack, Minnie's captain would like you to come over and talk with them. Apparently there's a group of people who would like to come with us who aren't the actual Summit representatives. Interesting. When would they like me to come over? At your earliest convenience, they said. Minnie says that the group is with their captain now, if you're available. Sure, I could go now. Let Carol know that I'm going over. Should I pick it over or take a demon? I'll pick it you over, then send a demon for the others if you think the group should come with us. I stood up from the captain's chair. Ready, I said. The picket landed on my shoulder and the bridge disappeared. The hall that Loki picketed me into was amazing. It was like my quarters writ large, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out into the nearly black area of space around Summit. Even a few meters of floor was part of the window, and there were people walking on it in meditation. When I looked up, I could see several floors above me with the same clear floor. It was incredible. Hello, Jack, said a voice in my head that wasn't Loki's. I turned to see a person in a light-colored tunic and pants carrying a tablet. They came forward and shook my hand. My name is Quinn, and I'm Minnie's captain. Hello, Quinn. It's good to meet you, I replied, surprised at hearing a different voice in my head other than Loki and Carol. They smiled. It's okay to use verbal communication with me if you like. I'm not deaf, it's just difficult for me to speak without help. Although it is a treat to be able to talk with you without having to use my tablet. They held up the tablet. I will lead you to the others, the tablet said out loud. Why do these people want to come to Callow Station? I asked as I followed them. It would be easier for them to explain it to you, as I'm not entirely sure I understand myself. I think it's more of a spiritual matter than wanting to be a part of the negotiations, they replied. You're probably tired of hearing it by now, but I'm really glad Loki finally found a captain. Mitty and their siblings have been worried about it for a long time. I suppose I haven't really asked, I said, especially since Frieden said the same thing. But why were they all worried? They thought for a moment, then looked up. We worried, said another voice, because he seemed so lonely and wouldn't talk to any of us about what had happened to him before we were born. My apologies for suddenly coming into this conversation, but your bots seem to be open to the same high-level communications that my father and my siblings share. Why is that? I stopped walking, and Quinn turned and waited. Mitty? Yes, again, apologies for not introducing myself properly. There was a feeling of slight embarrassment. Quinn had an amused grin. It's okay. It's just interesting having another one of you speak to me this way. This is an aspect of my bots I didn't really know about. And to answer your question, Loki and I believe my bots are different because I actually touched your father's core while he was awake. There were reasons for that, but I'm not the one to tell you that story, Mitty. You'd have to ask your father about that. Quinn's eyes went wide, and there was surprise and a tinge of worry from Mitty. I will ask him, Mitty said. I nodded. Quinn didn't say anything, but just gestured to move on. They stopped outside a door and palmed it open. They put a hand on my shoulder and looked me in the eye. You're an interesting person, Jack Kirby, they said. I smiled, but wondered what they meant by that. It didn't seem like it was interesting as in unexpected, but as in exceptional. They nodded, took their hand from my shoulder, and walked into the room. 7 people of varying ages sat around the conference table, talking quietly. They stopped and looked up as Quinn and I walked in. Hello, everyone, said Quinn through the tablet. This is Captain Jack Kirby, Loki's new captain. Captain, this is the group I mentioned to Loki. I wasn't sure how to explain your wishes to him, so if you could. A woman with long, dark, silver-streaked hair stood up and came over to shake my hand. Thank you for coming to see us, Captain. We really appreciate it. I'm Janice, and this is Melody, Parker, Tara, Lee, Harvey, and David. Hello, I said. So you all would like to go to Kahlo Station? Yes, said Janice. Please, sit. Would you like something to eat? We were told that you need to eat a lot. You were? By who? I asked as my stomach growled. Not that I wouldn't take you up on it. She nodded to the one she pointed out as Parker, and they got up and dialed something into the printer. I took a seat at the table, and Quinn sat at its head. Janice sat across from me and folded her hands together in front of her. People come to Summit for many reasons, but most of us come for a quiet retreat. It's always been a place where people from all of the stations can come and figure out who they are, or recover from injuries, or for other reasons of their own. We stay for as long as we need before returning. All of us have been here for a long time. We all felt called to help the people who came here. We were called to something, and this was the closest thing to fulfilling that calling. Parker set a bowl of some sort of stew in front of me with a glass of water and handed me a spoon. I took a spoonful and found it was a really good beef stew. I thanked him, and he sat back down. Janice continued. 3 months ago, we all had similar dreams. We dreamed about a room with trees in it, and each of us talked to a different person in the dream. In the end, all of them said the same thing. We all had to go to Kahlo Station. She paused for a moment. The woman that talked to me said that you'd be coming here to get us. She also said that you had to go back somewhere called Unity because what you started there isn't finished? I nearly dropped my spoon. Loki, did you hear that? I asked mentally. Yes, Jack, he replied. What did she look like? Did she give you her name? I asked Janice. The woman shook her head. She didn't give a name, but she was a dark-skinned woman with white hair. She did say that you would need to eat a lot and that she was still sorry for what happened to you. I put down the spoon again. You all had the same dream? They all shook their heads. I saw a little girl. She told me to go to Kahlo Station, and she was sorry for what she had done to them, said Melody. Mine was a dark-skinned old man. After he told me to go to Kahlo Station, he said we had to learn from someone named Poe, Parker said. Tara looked up shyly and mumbled, Mine was a woman with a dark cloak. She only told me to go to the station and then stared at me for a while. Lee blushed. Mine was a guy with blue skin. And he said to learn from this Poe person, too. Mine was a man with long hair, a robe, and sandals. He told me to go because we'll learn our true callings there, said Parvy. The dark-skinned woman who had leaves for hair in my dream said that Poe needed someone to help them run the station, said David. My eyes widened as I remembered that Poe said they were promised by the elders that there would be people to come and help them. And none of you have heard what happened with Kahlo Station. We told everyone about Alpha, Quinn said, but we hadn't heard the rest of it until today. If I hadn't learned from Marcia what I did about spirits, I would think you were all crazy, but... I rubbed my face with my hand. I know the people you dreamed about. They are the spirit forms of the 7 elders who my partner Marcia told me about when she contacted them. I don't remember all of their names, but I know who yours was, Janice, and yours too, Parker. I held back tears as Loki sent wordless love. We'll talk about it more on the way to Kahlo Station. You mean we can go? Asked Melody. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Why don't you all go pack? Loki says he will send a demon for you in 2 hours, said Quinn. All of them smiled. Oh, thank you, Captain. You don't know what this means to all of us, said Janice. You're welcome, I managed to say. Quinn stared at me as the others left. Are you okay, Jack? You didn't finish your stew, said Quinn in my head. No, not really. I don't think my stomach can handle food right now. I pushed the bowl away. Something about Quinn made me trust them. I wasn't sure if it was just who they were, or if it was because they could talk with me through the bots like Loki. It's just that Janice dreamed of my late partner Marcia, and it's unsettling to hear her words coming from a complete stranger. I'm not sure what you believe, but I've had enough experience with spirits to know that they're real. And the elders, the aliens that destroyed Alpha, Carver, and freed us humans, manifest as the people that they all dreamed. The death of the humans was a massive and bloody misunderstanding, and Marcia died trying to prevent a rogue elder from starting a war. It was all so senseless, and there's so much we never got to... I looked up at Quinn. I'm sorry, I'm babbling. They smiled. Jack, this station is all about healing, not only from physical wounds, but emotional ones as well. You're grieving your partner and have been put into pretty extraordinary circumstances. I'm a therapist here, as well as a captain, so I see people here who are grieving their loved ones all the time. If I didn't know that you had a ship full of delegates, I'd have you and Loki stay here for at least a few days, so you could talk to me and Mitty about what happened to you. Mitty's a pretty good therapist, too. They moved their chair a little closer to me and took my hand. But if you want to talk a little bit now, we have the time. Mitty just offered me the same, Jack. I think I'd like to take him up on it, said Loki privately. I'll let Carol know you'll be a little bit longer and that we have extra guests coming. Thanks, Loki, I said to him, and then looked at Quinn and nodded. I tried to say something, but instead I started sobbing. Quinn pulled me in their arms and held me as I cried and talked to them about Marcia. Chapter 47. Poe. There's how many people? I asked, blinking. 244, Carol repeated. All but 2 stations sent representatives. Thoreau wants nothing to do with anything, and Conway said to contact them when you need stuff built. I have a project for them, but I'd like to bring it before all the representatives first, and the elders too, if they're interested in helping us out with tech. That count also includes 7 extra people from Summit. Jack will fill you in about them. Jack nodded as Carol continued. I'll stay here and coordinate demons. Frida, would you be able to handle arranging for quarters? I'm not sure exactly what everyone's sleeping arrangements are at this point, though. 244? I stared at Jack and Carol through the screen on the bridge as they discussed arrangements with Frida. It'll be strange seeing people walking around on the station who aren't trying to kill each other, or who aren't ghosts, I thought. Might as well have been 1,000. For a moment I felt overwhelmed by it all, even with all the tutoring I'd had in the last 3 months from the Admiral. I sighed. Poe? Jack asked. Yeah? Are you all right? You seemed a bit far away for a moment there. I grimaced. Sorry, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Jack gave me a sympathetic smile. I get that. We'll do what we can to help you out. Speaking of that, I was just saying that I'd like to pick at the 7 people from Summit over to talk to you and Frida now. I'll let them tell their own story, which is an interesting one, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Okay, sure. Meet in the bridge conference room? That works. See you in about 10 minutes. Jack walked out of frame, leaving Carol on the screen. Are you really okay, Poe? I'm overwhelmed with everything, but really, I'm okay. You were right about the Admiral. He's been a great help to both of us. He told me this morning he'll want to see you as soon as you get a chance. Carol gazed at me for a moment, then said, Yeah, he already sent me a message. I'll head over once the reps are off Loki. You up for milkshakes and pizza later? Despite everything weighing me down, my heart lifted at that idea. That would be awesome. Hopefully I'll be free around 2030 if that works for you. I should be, depending on how fast we can offload these folks. I'll let you know if things run late. Same. Talk to you later, I said, and the connection cut off. It's going to be weird having people on the station again, Frida. Yes, it is strange, she said. Jack and his guests are in the conference room waiting for you. I put on my earpiece and left the bridge. Jack! He was the first person I saw when I entered the conference room, so I ran to him and gave him a huge hug. It's good to see you, Poe. I missed you too. He pulled away after a moment and gestured to the rest of the room. Poe, these are the folks from Summit I told you about. One of the women came up to me and held out a hand. Something passed between us when I took her hand, and she suddenly felt familiar. Hi, Captain Poe. I'm Janice, she said, and introduced the others. Hi, nice to meet you all. So, Jack says you have an interesting story? Janice smiled. Yes, you see, we all felt a particular calling to work with people and to help them. So we all ended up being residents of Summit, but then 3 months ago we all had a similar dream. As she explained her dream, and the others told me theirs, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I was shocked that they were told to come to me by name, and to hear what each of them was told. The elders kept their promise, I said in awe. Does that mean you'll have us? Asked Lee. I nodded. They told me they would send people to help me. If you don't mind learning from a kid, then we can try things out. We all have knowledge of different things, Janice said. While we may know some things about helping people and counseling, you're the only one who knows about the elders. We all feel called to serve, and I don't know about anyone else, but as soon as Loki jumped us over, it felt like I was home. The others all nodded in agreement. This is incredible, said Frida at my ear. I nodded, then said out loud, So then, Frida, can you find quarters for them on the crew level? Yes, Poe. I have already designated their rooms. The bots are bringing beds and linens now, and you can add other furnishings as you see fit, Frida said as I stood up. The others did too. Thank you both, said Janice as she took my hand on the way out of the room. The others thanked me as well, except for David. He waited until the others left the room to speak. I do feel like the others that I've come home. I think I'm supposed to be here for a different reason. He looked a little nervous. Oh? Jack said. Yeah, see, I was an administrator on Roslyn Station before I felt called to go to Summit. Mostly I coordinated lab space, made sure none of the scientists got into fights about whose lab stuff was whose. You'd be surprised how territorial lab scientists can be. Anyway, I also used to help Quinn with administrative duties part of the time. I'm not all that spiritual, although I wouldn't mind learning so I could talk with the elders if I can. But the woman in my dream said to come help you run the station. I can do that if you and Frida want. I mean, I know you're captain and all. He shuffled his feet, a little shy about asking and a little unsure. Me being captive is sort of temporary, really, I said. I agreed because Frida needed a captain, but we both know I'm a better priest. We decided that I'd stay captain until we found someone who could be a full captain for her, since I can't take enhancements. What do you think, Frida? I like him, she said. Let's give it a trial for a few weeks so we can get to know each other and see where it goes. David's eyes widened when I talked about Frida needing a captain. He smiled widely when Frida said that she liked him. He stood, shook my hand, and shook it enthusiastically. Thanks, Poe. Thanks, Frida. When do I start? I smiled back. Oh, no, thank you, really. Why don't you settle in tonight and we can have breakfast together in the morning to talk some more about what needs doing? Meet me in the crew common area at 0900? He nodded, then let go of my hand and practically bounced out of the room. Good job, Captain, said Jack with a smile. He was still sitting at the table. I came over and sat in a chair next to him. The elders kept their promise, I said again. That was just... holy shit. I looked at Jack for a moment. So I suppose you'll have to go back to Unity then? Sounds like it, he said. Should I get more information from Marcia for you? I asked. Jack shook his head. It's not how these things work, remember? There'll be something that happens that will let us know when we need to leave. He paused. Oh, and I don't know if Carol said anything to you, but she's agreed to be my executive officer. She did? That's awesome, I said, feeling greatly relieved. I looked at Jack and could see that he, too, looked a lot less stressed. I'm so glad. Me too. Thanks for asking her to come with me. You're right. She was a great help. You seem less stressed out now. Yeah, between Carol and our visit to Summit, I'm doing better. So is Loki. It's still hard, but we'll get through. I realized with surprise that Jack was talking to me more like an adult. I almost felt that I was as old as Jack was, and it was a curious feeling. It was more like we were talking captain to captain than parent to child. When did that happen? I thought. Well, I should get back to Loki. Come over and have dinner when you can, okay? Yeah, sure. I'll let you know when. He smiled with a faraway look. A picket appeared and jumped Jack back to Loki. Is everyone settling in, Frida? I asked as I left the room. Yes, Poe. The 7 from Summit are settled in rooms near yours. I have the representatives quartered in the next level down. The printers and bots are sorting out their furnishings. We should probably start talking with them all and informing them of the limits of communication with the elders. I turned towards the tram line. Yes, send the roster to David and we can go over all that at breakfast. I'm going to the elders' room for a little while. Do you think David could handle any emergencies that come up in the next hour or so? Yes, I think so. He and I have been talking about his experience, and I think he'll be a great help. The elders seem to have chosen well. I raised my eyebrows. Really? Yes, he is quite kind and very organized. Apparently he liked being an administrator, but felt he didn't fit in on Rosalind Station because he didn't want to be a biochemist. He just wanted to help people. So after a while he decided to go to Summit and figure out what he should be doing. Only he ended up staying instead. Then he had the dream, and now he's here. The tram was waiting for me as I approached the station, and I boarded it. I hope he works out, then. I'll be happy if he does. Maybe we can do sort of a co-captain thing and see how it goes. I would like that, Frida said. You're as important to me as a captain, maybe more so. I smiled. I love you too, Frida Mom, I said. There weren't any screens in the tram, but I knew Frida would have displayed rainbows and flowers if there was. I stayed quiet the rest of the tram ride to the elders' level, enjoying the sense of relief. There was just so much falling into place seamlessly, and I didn't know how much of it was the elders doing or just coincidence. I suppose in the long run it doesn't matter, I thought. The important thing is that they kept their promise to me, and now I have people to test and see if they can really talk to the elders when they're in the room. That thought overwhelmed me. I was still thinking about teaching these people from Summit when I entered the elders' room and took my shoes off. I climbed up on the bench as Marcia's leaf and spirit form emerged in front of one of the trunks. Her spirit form came and sat with me. How do I teach them, Marcia? I asked. I'm just a kid compared to all of them. You are still young, but you're not that young. You've been through a lot more at your age than most adults. You have knowledge, training, and teaching that none of these people have ever seen before. Besides, I'll be here to help you. It will all work out, you'll see. I nodded. Thank you for keeping your promise to send help. I just hope we'll get along. I think we've found the right people for you, Poe, and more will come in time. All who can understand us should be taught, and you and they will teach the elders as well. We have a lot to learn from each other. Marcia's spirit form disappeared, and something rustled in the leaves of the canopy. I could see vague outlines of all 7 spirit forms among the roots, watching the leaves above them. Then something gave a small snap from above, and Marcia's tree form stepped forward, lifting up her arms. A black seed the size of an apple came down from the vine and rested in her hands. She walked over to the bench, sat down, and held it out to me. I took the seed in my hand. It was warm, but starting to cool. Turning it over, I could see there was a metallic-looking hole in the seed that seemed like it would take some sort of plug. What is this? I asked. It's a gift for Loki. He may find it useful when they go back to Survey. Tell him it will give him a link to his past that will help with the future. I will, I said. Good, Marcia said. Now, before you bring your new students in tomorrow, I want to review some of the techniques I taught you before your initiation. You'll need to teach these techniques to your new students as soon as possible. I nodded. Let me put this with my shoes so I don't forget it, and then we'll start. The leaf form nodded. As we reviewed all that she had taught me, I realized that I was starting to build a future for myself and the elders on Kahlo Station. We're bringing life back from death, I thought. I felt another spirit in the room. I didn't see them, but I knew who it was. As I knew you would, friend Poe, said Lazarus. I smiled and got to work. Chapter 48. Jack. I stood outside Marcia's quarters, staring at the door. I'd put this off as long as possible. The ship was empty now, except for me and Loki. All the representatives had finally been moved to Kahlo Station, and Carol had gone over to have dinner with Poe. Loki hadn't had the bots disturb anything after their regular cleaning cycle the day she died. Talking with Quinn at Summit seemed to release something in me, and I felt like I could face whatever the message was Marcia had left for me. I palmed the door open on the 3rd try. Loki sent me wordless love as I crossed the threshold. The door closed behind me. I looked around, and the room seemed just like a normal room, as if Marcia would come back at any time. The bed had been made. There were ship shoes and boots near the door, toiletries on top of the counter in the bathroom, a hair comb, lotion, and other things. When I opened one of the storage drawers, there was a trill, and Spot said, "Identification?" "It's Jack, Spot," I said, finding it a little odd that Spot had requested identification. Another trill sounded, "Playing message for Captain Jack Kirby." The screen on the wall lit up, showing Marcia as she had been the last time I saw her. I felt a catch in my throat as she started to speak. "Hello, Jack. If you're watching this, then I've died. I hope you're not too mad at me, but you would have every right to be so. The truth is, I've known how I was going to die for at least 20 years now. At first it was visions of dying among trees or something invading my body, but later on the vision showed me lying in a dimly lit room with a green light. It wasn't until we got to Alpha that I knew that the aliens would be the cause of my death. Papa showed me this vision a long time ago, Jack, and it was beautiful and terrifying. I know that this is where I'm supposed to be, where he was leading me to. I've always known. I'll probably understand more when it comes time to go, but for now, just know that I've gone into this with my eyes open and that I chose it. The image of Marcia seemed to flicker slightly on the screen as I swiped absently at my eyes. It wasn't anything you said or did that made me take this path. The only thing you've ever done is love me for who I am, regardless of my own faults and actions. I think part of me will always feel like I didn't deserve you. She smiled. I remember that day you walked into the mess at Station A 4413 looking all cranky, and I came to sit at your table. The spirits told me to talk to you, sure, but you also seemed like you needed a friend more than anything in the world. I had the feeling that underneath the crankiness was a good, honest, and kind person. Even when we were kicking Adelson's ass, you made sure I was okay. Even when I was in shock from his assault, I was so proud of you. Marcia paused and looked away. My greatest regret will be crawling back into the bottle and hurting you. That night... Marcia looked away for a moment. I will always regret breaking that trust between us, and for trying to die on you when I knew better. When I knew I should have been turning to you and Loki and Papa for help. I will always be sorry for hurting Loki too, especially when we found out about his first captain. It'll be one of the many things that I'll need to atone for when I get to Papa's gates. She paused again and wiped her eyes. I have a feeling you won't have a body to bring back to Earth, and that's okay. There is a special box in the storage with my clothes that I asked you to take back to Earth when you can. If you can find someone in my family in Chicago to take it, especially if it's my niece, please leave it with them. Otherwise, you can bring it to Max at Ujima Colony. You can ask for him in the market, and someone will help you find him. I also hope that Loki will keep the chapel, since I think there will be people who will need it in the future. And Loki, I hope you can keep Spot around somehow. He helped me a lot. I love you, Jack. Thank you for being in my life. I love you too, Loki, and I'm glad that you and Jack have each other. I'm sorry I wasn't able to officiate your wedding, although I think Poe will do an amazing job if you ask them. End, Spot. A trill sounded and the screen turned off. I sat down on the bed. Tears were flowing freely now. I could feel Loki in my head, both of us grieving together. After a few moments, I wiped my eyes, stood up, and went back to the storage drawers. The first drawer was just clothes. In the second drawer, there was a carved wooden box nested among her socks. I picked it up, then went over to the bed and sat on it again. The box had some symbols on it, but I had no idea what they were. One looked similar to the one she had drawn in salt on the altar when she first used the chapel. The rest just looked like squiggly lines and circles. When I opened it, I saw there was a bunch of keepsakes in it. There were strings of red and black beads with a shell on them, several stones of different colors, a chunky piece of chalk, and a packet of dried herbs. There were also a few printed pictures in the box. A couple of her brother Malcolm, and another of her with a younger woman who I guessed was her sister. There's also a picture of a large family. I could pick out a younger Marcia among the people in the photo. I smiled to see her with dark hair. I turned the picture over. It had faded writing that said Brooks Family Reunion, and it was dated over 35 years ago. There's more recent, clearer writing with Earth addresses in the Chicago area. I committed that to memory for later, and Loki and I could send a message to them. The box also had her Unity rank badge when she was a chaplain, along with several medals and ribbons. One caught my eye and I pulled it out. It was a Unity Intelligence Medal. I turned it over, and stamped into the medal, it said, Unity Distinguished Intelligence Cross, Agent Marcia Brooks, with a date that was from 25 years ago. Holy shit, I thought. She was awarded UI's highest honor? Then again, considering what she had gone through, it was the very least they could have done. I put the medal back in the box. One of the last pictures in the box was from the last holiday party we had at Station A4413. I smiled to see me, Marcia, Jenny, Mark, Sam, and all the others from the station looking happy. None of us knew it would be the last time we would all be together like that. That some of us wouldn't even be alive. I put the picture back in the box. The last thing in the box was a data key. There was no label, and it looked like it had a biometric clock. She must have made some recordings for her family, I thought, putting the key back and closing the box. I looked through the rest of the storage compartments, but didn't find anything else but clothes. There's nothing left of her, really, except for the box. I sighed. Loki, I think all the clothes and toiletries can be recycled and the room cleaned. The most important thing was the box and Spot. Understood. I'll have the bots come in after you leave the room. I will keep Spot, as she left specific message for me to take care of him. He is special and has a lot of the data she collected for me and him. And, well, she did name him. I stood up at the box and put a hand on the wall. I leaned my head against the bulkhead as I sent love to Loki. We stayed like that for a long time, both sharing and easing each other's grief. When I finally went back to my quarters, I realized that it was time to go back to Survey in Unity space. A month later, Poe had come over to Loki for dinner. They had been busy since I told them that we would be leaving for Survey in Unity. Carol had agreed to go with us almost instantly, excited for the chance to see something new and to see where Loki was born. Poe, on the other hand, was told by the newly formed Representatives Council that we had to wait. We were bringing a delegation from the Consortium as they wished to reconnect with Survey and the rest of their human siblings. The elders declined to send a representative, though. They basically told Poe that dealing with one group of humans was enough for the time being. I couldn't blame the elders for that. Humans were a lot to deal with. We had just finished eating when Poe said, "You'll send messages when you can, right?" "We'll do our best," I said, "but Survey is 6 months away, so most things you'll get will be out of date before we can come back." "I know, but I'll still want to know." Don't worry about it. If he forgets, I'll remind him. And I'll send my own letters," Carol said. Poe's smile held the tinge of sadness. "I'm gonna miss you a lot." "I'll miss you too, Poe. We'll come back, though, I promise," I said. "You'd better." "You gonna finish that slice of pizza?" Carol asked Poe. They laughed and handed her the slice. "Of course we'll come back," she said. "And you gotta promise to have some fun once in a while, okay? Maybe have dinner with David and introduce him to pizza and milkshakes." Poe turned bright pink all over their head. The effect was pretty spectacular, given that they were bald. I raised my eyebrows, and Carol grinned like a Cheshire cat. Poe coughed and said, "I might just do that. Oh, before I forget." They turned in their chair and rummaged through the bag they had brought with them. "Here," they said, handing me a black seed about the size of an apple that looked like a miniature seed ship. I turned it over in my hands and saw that it had a hole that looked like a comms port. "What is it?" I asked. "It's a gift to Loki from the elders. Marcia told me that it has data that you'll need when you go back to Survey. Of course, she didn't tell me what kind of data it was. You know, spirits." I nodded. "Data? For me? Will I be able to read it?" asked Loki. Poe shrugged. "I assume so. There's a port on the seed. They've had access to our tech for several months now, so I'm guessing they learned enough of it to do this for you. They didn't really give me any instructions. They just said it would be useful for you." "Interesting," Loki said. Then a picket appeared over the seed and landed on it and took it away. "I'll start working on it now." I laughed. "Couldn't resist the puzzle, love?" "Of course not," Loki said. "Oh, Jack, ask them if they'll do it." "Do what?" said Poe. It was my turn to blush. "So, Poe, I know we talked a bit before we left about how Marsha was going to do a wedding ceremony for me and Loki, but, well, we wondered if you really could do it before we leave. Just something simple. I'm not sure how you would do it, but would you? Poe opened their mouth in surprise. You really want me to do it? Oh my god, you have to. Please say you will. Holy shit, that's so romantic. Carol blurted out. Can I be your witness? The Marine was practically bouncing in her seat. Yes, said Loki and I together, laughing. Well, Marcia and I did go over wedding ceremonies, so yeah, sure. They looked thoughtful for a moment. We can do it in the chapel before you leave. You'll need to figure out if you want a ring, Jack, or something like that. I mean, you do have bots, but that's not visible. And you'll want to figure out your vows and if there's anyone else you want to attend. I would wish that Marcia could attend, said Loki, but I know she's bound to the Elder's room now. She got a faraway look. It's okay, Loki. She says that as long as you have it in the chapel, she'll be there. My eyes teared up and I wiped them on my sleeve. I think just you two will be fine. We don't know anyone else as well as you. I agree, said Loki. Ooh, a wedding, said Carol, clapping her hands. I love weddings. Poe and I stared at her. What? She said. You like weddings, they said, looking perplexed. I understood exactly how they felt. Look, I may be a macho Marine, but I'm also a hopeless romantic. Just because I can kill anything on 2 legs and have AI given superpowers doesn't mean I don't want to see 2 of my closest friends be all romantic and cute. She laughed. Not that Loki needs much help in being cute. Flowers and smiley faces erupted on the wall behind the table. We all laughed, including Loki. I could feel his love for me, and I knew then that we were going to be okay. You have been listening to Tales from Flat Space. If you want to support me in my writing, there are many ways to do it. Share this podcast, follow me on my Twitch channel, or buy my books. All you have to do is go to revgenapon.net and click on the relevant links. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time.